Let's talk about answering your standards questions. Greg made a nice introduction here, and I really appreciate that. We're just going to go through what you're going to be able to do after the session today. We're going to be able to gain a better understanding of NACFA professional standards, answer 3 common standards questions from you, the members, interpret the answers to those 3 standards questions, and apply those standards to your practice. So here's a couple links I've provided in case you don't know where these are at. This is the ongoing FAQ project. Just a second, let me just stop and talk about these. With our standards board, we're putting together an ongoing FAQ project, and that's a link for that. And then our professional standards, in the event that you don't have that bookmarked, you can take a look at that, please, and read those, and give me a call if there's anything you have trouble with. Next slide, please. So the first thing I want to discuss is this idea, and I'll apologize if you hear the dog crunching underneath my feet. I think I got him on unmute earlier, so he's contributing, as we all do in a modern Zoom COVID world. The theory around this first question that is that we take our body of knowledge from the books that we get in our trainings and the things that we work on, and then ultimately that becomes practice after peer review and such. So that's what this is about, the idea of non-standard valuation methods. That's the first Q&A. So let's talk about this one real quick. So the question is it acceptable for a member to utilize valuation approaches and or methods that have not been peer reviewed? And the answer that our board came up with was, if a valuation approach or method is utilized by a member that hasn't been peer reviewed, it should be presented in a way that the reviewer can replicate the approach. Now, understand that even if the method can be replicated, it is not guaranteed to be an acceptable method if it isn't peer reviewed. And as always, all the other professional standards must be followed. Let's talk about the interpretation of this. Our professional standards don't mandate the use of specific approaches or methods. You can see the reference in our standards. We've put this out there for you folks to find. It's section 4F. And this is a direct quote from that section. Valuation methods are commonly categorized into the asset-based, market, income, or a combination of these approaches. Professional judgment is to be used to select those approaches and methods that best indicate value. Rules of thumb are acceptable as reasonableness checks, but shouldn't be used as a standalone. So if you use a approach or method that has not been peer reviewed, it is expected that the reviewer can replicate that approach or method. And note that you may fail a Daubert challenge for failure to rely on generally accepted valuation principles and methodologies. And just FYI, I actually, believe it or not, just to make sure I said that word right, it is Daubert. And those of you who are looking to find pronunciations for cases that maybe you're struggling with, there is actually a site out there at yalelaw.edu that takes basically every case ever and then actually has an audio for how to say that. So I've probably butchered that one before. So that is how you say that, Daubert. So let's go to the next one, which is about site visits. Now, you may have some questions about site visits. Want to clarify site visits. And the question is, the disclosure of a site visit required for a detailed summary or a calculation report? The answer is, a member is not required to conduct a site visit or disclose the site visit for a detailed summary or calculation report. That's in section 5C1E9. The fundamental analysis may include a site visit disclosure for a conclusion of value. So we want to clarify site visits here. We're not saying don't do one. We're not saying do one. This is the guidance. So let's go to the interpretation. The decision on whether to conduct a site visit and the disclosure is up to the member, that is you. A member should consider documenting whether you did a site visit for your file. And if it affects the conclusion, you should disclose it in either the detailed or summary report. It's also suggested that you disclose it in a calculation report if it impacted the calculated value. And it is always recommended that you disclose it if you performed one. I think some of you out there are probably having some challenges with site visits because of COVID. But the good news is we have new avenues for conducting site visits, and there are precautions that we can take for site visits. So this is how you handle site visits. Again, there's a lot of member judgment involved here, and this is the guidance. Let's go on to the next one. This one is about whether you issue a summary or a detailed report. When should you issue one or the other? The answer is the form of the report should be appropriate for the engagement, its purpose, its findings, and the needs of the decision makers who receive and rely upon it. That's right out of Section 5B. The member is going to decide which type of report to issue with the concurrence of the client. So let's stop here for just a minute. I think this is where, the theme here, not only for summary or detailed valuation report, in my experience, a lot of downstream problems can be avoided by clarifying upfront expectations. So this is another example of that. So make sure that you understand the needs of your client, the needs of your user. In general terms, I would say the sophistication of the end user will determine some of this. However, keep in mind in business valuation, your report could end up on the desk of virtually anybody. And I'm not trying to scare you, but this has been taught in our sessions before. So keep that in mind too. Am I saying do a detailed report every time? No, but just keep that in mind because it can land virtually anywhere. So sit down with your user, sit down with your client and think about that. So the interpretation. The member should disclose the report type in the written or oral report. So there's a place where you should disclose that. That should be in your report. Refer to Section 5C1 for sections that should be included in a detailed report. Our standards say the summary report allows you to prevent an abridged version of the detailed report. Again, there's some professional judgment involved here. You'll have to use your judgment here. And discuss this with your client, which type of report you may be most appropriate before beginning the engagement.